So, hey everyone, my name's Lawrence, and I'm currently in 1830 ministry serving as a young ops leader. And I work as a data analyst right now, and I use AI quite a bit, especially, all through my life, like at work, at home, a bit of with my church ministry stuff. But yeah, so I wanted to share the way I think about using AI, especially engaging with as a Christian, because there are many things that the world says, and those things are not what God says. So yeah, that's my part, and I'll pass over to Uncle Alan.
Chen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. I'm Uncle. I have resigned it. I'm Uncle Alan Jr. Not the older Uncle Alan, right? And so I've done lots of different things. Did physics at uni. So I did programming. Did my own. Did VBA coding and all that. So I've always been very techy. And love gadgets all my life. I have also used ChatGPT as well as Gemini, paid subscription, right? So not the free one, right? And been watching a lot of, obviously keeping up abreast with the news on AI, as well as using it myself. And then what we'll find is that there's pros and cons to AI, which we'll show you today, right? And how we can use it wisely and how we can use it badly, right? The point is that AI is a tool, right? And we'll share from our experience how to best use that tool so it remains a tool and not a master, right? Question is, what is AI, right? How many think that they know what AI is? Okay. How many think that they're not very sure what AI is? Okay, a few honest folks. Yeah, fantastic. Even AI researchers are starting to lose the ability to comprehend what they're doing, okay? They actually have to ask the AI to tell them what they're doing, right? Okay? All right. Now, so AI is a bit of a catch-all, right? It just stands for artificial intelligence, right? But nowadays, when we talk about AI, what we really mean is large language models, right? Large language models. So, could be ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, or Grok, right? Tailored for language, right? It's in the name, right? Large language model, right? So one key concept I want you guys to take away today is that it's based on probabilities. The way that this AI, LLMs work is based on probabilities, okay? Right? And then there are other AI models as well, right? But they're not tailored for language. You can tailor it for images, videos, audios, right? Some even for making songs, right? I know one of our friends here, right, has actually written a song for his company, right? Just by feeding the AI some prompts, and prompts is another thing that's really important to get right. Just by feeding the AI some prompts, gave him a whole song, right? Verses, chorus, music, vocals. It's amazing, right? And just for those who are curious about the history, before these large language models became popular, there were things called knowledge systems or expert systems. And those were based on rules, right? And in some ways, there's pros and cons to everything, right? So the pros with that is that those things, because they're based on rules, they can't get things wrong. They might not be able to answer you, but they're not going to make things up, right? The models, the AI that we use today, right, is predictive, is based on probabilities. So it will give you an answer. Just might not be real. Okay? Right? All right. So remember I talked about predictions, right, which is a key concept to take away, right? What does it mean, predictions? When you think about predicting something, right? And probabilities, right? It's guessing. It literally is guessing. Based, but not random guess, okay? Based on the probabilities, right? So it's an educated guess. It's a smart guess. It could still be wrong, okay? Right? So you give it the input, right, which is your prompt, right? We're going to come back to prompts, right? You give it your input, it does its calculation, it does its thing, right? And then it'll give you the output. And how it does it, that is like, so this example that we've got here is, to date, the cleverest thinker of all time was, right? So what it does is, what the AI does is that it takes your input, right? It looks at the entire context, right, of your input. And then based on that, it will say what is the most likely word or set of words that will answer the question, right? To answer the query, right? So you can see 8% is the, probably, John, Sir, Albert, Isaac, right? So it's going to choose out of those probabilities and give you a response. And it's doing this word by word and paragraph by paragraph, right? Okay, so the key concept to take away from this page is that it's all based on probabilities, right? I'll give an example. Recently, right, I was doing some research for my for this essay I'm writing, right? And I said, can you give me good articles or books that I need to read in order to understand legal structures and framework in Old Testament times, right? So it's trained on a lot of data, right? So it comes up with some names and some titles. So such and such a book, right? By so and so, right? Right? Now, the title exists, the author exists, okay? But the combination does not exist, right? Okay? So that's an example of a hallucination, right? And I'm going a bit ahead myself. So yeah, so that's an example of a hallucination, right? And even one where it was actually good, right? It was the right title with the right author, right? So it's talking about law, and the author exists, but it was not about Old Testament times. It was about New Testament times, right? Right? Because the thing is, the AI doesn't know, right? So this is another key thing to remember. It is not sentient, okay? It's not alive, right? Despite how it might seem, it's not alive, okay? There's not a person behind it that's thinking, right? It's a machine, right? So therefore, a machine cannot really know anything and won't know if it's wrong, okay? But it will sound confident while doing so, right? Whatever it does for you, it will be very confident, okay? All right, so how can we combat hallucinations, right? So this is where a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, okay? If you have a little knowledge, you might be able to understand what AI is telling you, but you won't understand if AI is wrong, right? The best use of AI is actually when you have a little bit of knowledge. You don't have to be a subject matter expert, you don't have to be an expert, but if you know something about what you're asking it, right, and you're not relying on it, you're using it as a tool, you're not relying on it as a teacher, right? Okay? So always ask for sources, ask for links, and click on those links, right? So if I had taken those book and authors that was given by AI, and I put that into my essay without checking, I would have been in deep trouble. But because I actually did do a Google search, and then go to Amazon, or go to the library and check those books actually exist, and actually read the summary underneath, then I know that it's true, it's correct. So I would say about a third of what it gave me was wrong. Okay? It's completely made up. Okay? Okay, the next thing is sycophancy, right? Which is a fancy term for saying it's sucking up to you, right? It's sucking up to you. Sycophancy, just think of it as it's sucking up to you, right? It's trying to please you. And why was it designed that way, right? It was designed that way, okay? That's you have to know that it was designed that way, right? It's not naturally a characteristic of the system, but it was designed that way because of engagement, right? You might have heard of this term, engagement, right? So all the companies, all the tech companies want engagement, right? In fact, even the media companies, everybody wants your attention. We are in an attention economy, all right? So how can YouTube keep you watching, right? How can Netflix keep you watching? They keep prompting you to watch. Oh, this is next. You don't have to do anything. 5 seconds later, the new video starts playing, right? So same with AI, right? So they have discovered the best way to keep you using AI, and you guys actually said in the survey that some of you guys use AI every day. That's not surprising. The systems were designed to capture your engagement, okay? Right? So, given that it's designed to capture engagement and it's going to suck up to you, right? how do we avoid it telling us what we want to hear, right? It is by using open-ended questions, right? Open-ended questions, whereas closed-ended questions, right, will, tell it what you want to hear, right? You don't want to be in the echo chamber, right? You might as well talk to yourself if that's the case, okay? So, open-ended questions like, what is the view on such and such? What is the general view on the Trump administration, for example, right? Instead of saying things like, Trump's a really good president, isn't he, right? Or Trump's a really bad president, isn't he, right? So you don't bias the AI when you give this question. Now, there's a statement there about memory, right? Now, when you ask it a question, it's not like Google search, although you can argue even Google search tracks you, right? It's not like a Google search where you ask a question, right? And then the next time you ask it a question, it's not related, right? It's not related. But with AI, it has a memory, which is just a pro and a con. So the pro is that it will learn what you're asking for, right? So if you say, give me a summary for this YouTube video, right? And the next time you just give it a YouTube video, it already knows that you want a summary, right? You keep asking it for a summary, right? So that's a good thing. But the bad thing is it starts to learn your biases as well, right? So this is why it's important from the get-go, right, to try to not exhibit any bias when you talk to AI. But it's very dangerous, very, very, very hard to do that. Very hard to do that, right? But try to do that, okay? So we talked about prompting, right? So AI defaults to broad generic answers unless you tell it to, right? So it's been trained on all these things, all the way from random YouTube comments to Reddit to 4chan, right? To journal articles, right? So it's got a broad breadth of knowledge, right? And knowledge being probabilities. It doesn't really know anything. It's just been exposed to these data sets, okay? But when you give it a random question like, what is a good movie, right? It will just, what is, it will just give you a generic answer, right? But if you say, what is a good sci-fi movie in the 1970s starring Paul Logan or something, right? Then it will give you a very specific answer, right? Another way that you can prompt it from specificity is it can actually role play. So you can tell it like, you are a movie critic. Give me a movie recommendation, right? Or you are you love the Greens, right? You love the Greens. Give me a movie recommendation. So then the recommendation it will give you will be based on that persona, right? Because it has been trained on this vast knowledge database, you can actually play or role play different roles. So depending on what you want from it, think about it. When you ask AI, don't just think that you're asking AI. So think, who do you want to hear the answer from? Do you want to hear from, a pastor, a lecturer, a home group leader, right? Then it will role play that, right? So if you find that the questions, the answers it gives are too simplistic, you can tell it to give me a more sophisticated answer, right? And this prompting is very, very important. We can spend the whole time talking about prompting and prompt engineering, right? Because you can actually design it such a way that every time you ask it a question, you give it this prompt, so it keeps it on the rail, right? Tells it what to do, right? And also the audience as well, right? So you can tell AI what it's supposed to be, right? You can also tell AI who the answer is targeted for, right? So if it's something that you know a lot about, you might say, okay, explain it to, give your answer as if to someone who's an expert or someone who's a beginner, right? So you can actually tailor that as well. So that's another thing, right? And then also the depth, right? So I've done it. I don't recommend this, okay? So AI is not your financial advisor, okay? Disclaimer, none of this is financial advice, okay? Right? But let's say I'm researching a company. I might say, write me a report, right? Pretend you're a stock market analyst. Write me a report on BHP, right? But remember, AI is a tool, okay? Don't let AI be the master, right? And Lawrence will go a little bit more into this, right? You make the decision, right? You're asking AI for information. You're asking AI for information so that you can make the decision, right? But the problem is, right, and this is not, AI is not general artificial intelligence. It's not a sentient being who knows more than you. It knows more than you, but it's not a sentient being, okay, right? Meaning that, you know, you guys have, you know, maybe some of you are a bit young, but you may have worked with someone who's your junior, right? Would you ask your junior for advice, right? Would you ask your junior, what's my strategy for next year? What's my plan for next year at work, right? It's talking about at work. Would you do that? You wouldn't do that, right? So always think of AI as a really hardworking, very knowledgeable first-year graduate, right? Or maybe even uni student, okay? Right? Very hardworking, has read a lot, but can get it wrong, all right? So you need to be the master, okay? All right. Now, finally, I just want to talk a little bit about, you know, some of you may have concerns about AI, losing your job and all that, right? So the reality is, right, things are, you know, the only constant in life is change, right? So you've got, industries have changed, right? We had the Industrial Revolution where we went from manual labor and, you know, mechanical seams, you know, sewing machines and all that, right? And handcrafting, which we're kind of going to with Etsy, right? Everyone's going back into hand produced. But we went from hand production to machine production. And everyone benefited, right? But then all those jobs disappeared, right? You went from horse and carriage to locomotive. And suddenly we could travel huge distances, right? You know, we've got, you know, we went from public transport, right? You know, trains to personal automobiles, right? Personal mobility, right? Right? And even technology, right? Like even computers, right? Last time, you know, people used to dictate to their secretary and they type it on the typewriter. Maybe it's coming to the time when people don't even know what a typewriter is now, right? We've gone so far, right? But now everyone does their own typing, right? So what happens, right, is that tasks change, right? Tasks get automated, right? And because jobs, you can think of jobs as a collection of tasks, right? So because these tasks, maybe a large portion of a task might be automated in a particular job, then that job becomes redundant, right? But then, we're humans, we're very creative. We will come up with new jobs, with new tasks, which haven't been automated, right? So all what's happening is that something is being replaced by something new, right? It happens all the time, right? And enables new things to be done, right? So in the past, you know, if Chris wanted to have hair on his head, he couldn't do it, right? But now with AI, you can. With a simple prompt, right? Right? So AI can boost humanity's progress, right? Or can lead to atrophy. I'll leave you with that sentence, right? Because Lawrence is going to go more in depth with that. Okay, right? Thanks. Oh, sorry.
What's atrophy means?
Atrophy means decline. So let's say, you know, you used to be, you know, strong and muscular and lift 20 kilos or 50 kilos, okay, or 100 kilos, right? But if you don't use your muscle, it atrophies. And suddenly you can't even lift 5 kilos, 2 kilos, 1 kilo, all right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I hand over to Lawrence.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. So just to add a bit to this. So in the past, all of these industrial revolutions and revolutions, per se, like they were replacing kind of all our manual labor with like one level up. So manual labor no longer, and then we can start designing the things that create that manual labor and stuff like that. And then with technology, we can start designing things that design that. And then now with AI, it's like we can remove ourselves from the equation as well. So that's why the atrophy point is quite pertinent, because this is maybe the first time where humans could be replaced completely. And we've got to be mindful of that. And yeah, so you might have heard scary things in the media around, oh, humans, like, you know, AI is going to take over the world, they're going to control us. I mean, it's still science fiction, but we can kind of see ways of that happening, because AI can start telling us what to do if we just rely on it. And then we're dependent on what AI tells us, or it can control the systems around us, and then therefore controlling the way that we live. So yeah, that's why our posture matters. So who's in control? So I wanted to share something that has kind of come up to me. And as I was just reading the Bible, like Romans basically, and it talks a lot about kind of how we relate to God. And, you know, we were a slave to sin, now a slave to righteousness. And this whole idea of being a slave is actually the whole kind of creator-creation dynamic that's happening. So in the Bible, this word Douleuō, which is Greek, because the Bible was written in Greek, the New Testament initially, it's used as our posture of service to God. So it's like allegiance, obedience, and belonging under that rightful authority. So since we are God's creation, right, and we serve God, we Douleuō God, well, in a similar way, like we've created AI. So actually, I would argue that AI should serve us, right? So what there is a risk is that AI kind of starts going the other way. So even though we created AI, we start serving it because it sets the agenda, it tells us what to do, and yeah, we just start losing our own ability to make judgment and make decisions. So the key point really is that the AI doesn't have the Holy Spirit, right? So, and yeah, thank God it doesn't, I guess. So there are kind of three areas I've thought of where AI is actually kind of like a counterfeit. So it poses as something that's genuine and real, but actually it's not. So the first area is that it produces counterfeit discernment. So from 1 John 4:1, and we're a church, so we've got to go through the Bible. Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. So just everything that, you know, comes out of AI that we ask AI, it's just probability, as Alan mentioned, and it's not something that may not be something that God is directly telling you. I'm not saying that God can't use AI, but why should we settle on something that is just counterfeit to what, you know, the genuine kind of connection with us and the Holy Spirit is? So, for example, the user could say, just give me one thing that God is trying to tell me right now. And actually, this is something I put into AI myself, right? And then the response was, slow down. Not everything meant for you requires urgency. You don't need to chase, force, or overthink what truly aligned with you. What's right will come with clarity, not confusion, and it won't cost you your peace to keep it. I mean, that's a very, it's true, but it's very, surface level. And how does it know that it's actually what you need at that particular point in time, right? They make very general kind of statements that apply to everyone because it doesn't actually know what God wants to tell you, right? Now, the second one is the loss of agency, right? So God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky. That's from Genesis 1:26. And as you can see here, God made us to rule over creation, right? That's the whole kind of creation story and the role of humanity. So when that flips, when AI tells us what to do, then that's kind of the issue, right? So the user could say, well, I got two job offers that pay the same, one in public service and the other in consulting. What should I choose? Just tell me the best option. And you can see that this tell me the best option is really the thing that kind of sacrifices or forfeits the agency that we should be having. And here's what it says, right? I'll give it to you straight. Go with the consulting job. Now, this is not necessarily right or wrong, right? But the point is that it's so confident in just telling you what to do. Here's why. Same pay, career growth, diverse experience, networking, better exit options. Public service is stable and meaningful, but it moves slower, blah, blah, blah. Right? So these are all true things. I'm not denying that. But again, it's deciding for you, right? And actually, half the time when I ran this prompt, it said public service, and the other half of the time it said consulting. So it can't even make up its own mind, right? And the third one I want to mention is this loss of slowness, right? So from 1 Kings 19:12, it says, after the earthquake came a fire, the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire came a gentle whisper, and that's where God was, right? So this is Elijah on the mountain kind of trying to seek God. And what we can see is that AI just makes everything super fast and super immediate. It's like, oh yeah, it's in the storm, it's in the fire and everything, because it's right there. But sometimes, and I'd say often, the Holy Spirit works slowly. And if we kind of just rush it, we can be missing either what God is trying to do, or just kind of getting something that's not as, good as what God would have wanted it to be. So for example, if you're creating a Bible study, you could just say, create 3 Bible study questions for me, just giving the passage and the questions. Like, that's really simple. It can get the job done, and that's kind of showing you that, yeah, AI actually can do lots of things, right? But it just gives you a generic verse, Philippians 4:6-7, which is, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, right? And the peace of God will transcend all understanding. So yeah, it's good, but it gives like pretty kind of surface level questions. And I would argue that things like this, we shouldn't just tell AI to do. It should be like, I mean, we can ask AI for general ideas, but ultimately what we come up with should be a process of us slowly reading, slowly discerning what God wants us to share, and then kind of deciding ourselves in the end. But we can use AI as a tool for that, but not the thing that tells us kind of straight away what the answer should be. So kind of 3 things to go from that counterfeit to the clarity. So for the loss of discernment, so that distorts that wisdom and confidence that it so, wants to pretend to be. So for our posture for clarity, we can ask for sources, as Alan mentioned. We can use our spirit-shaped judgment. So see, like, does that kind of align with God's word? In our spirit, do we feel like that feels right or wrong? So make sure we kind of keep that lens whenever we're seeing what AI says. And don't accept confident language as truth. So that's the hallucination thing, where it might just tell you something. And sometimes it can even like try to gaslight you in the sense that like you tell it, it tells you something, and you're like, I don't feel like that's right. And it'll just like tell you back, actually I'm right and you're wrong, right? So it's done that before. I think it's getting better and doesn't do that as much now. But especially in the early times of AI, it would do that a lot of the time when you challenged it. So the second one is agency, right? So AI setting the direction and the framing for you. So your Douleuō posture for clarity can be steering the conversation as you go, so telling it what you need and what you want and what you think it's missing, and then maintaining your role as the final decision maker. And then for the slowness, so AI accelerates and it discourages thinking. So just know what needs to be given time to kind of create and curate. And maybe just ask one more question, like, what am I missing? So actually AI can surface kind of blind spots and things like that. And that's what it's quite good at doing. That can also kind of slow you down and force you to kind of maybe process a bit more. And ideally with God, if it's something that kind of means a lot to your life. And I'm not saying that every kind of use of AI is going to be super massive, is going to change your life. And sometimes we can just let AI do more of those like small menial tasks. But even in those cases, let's just make sure that the advice that it gives is like evaluative and it doesn't like definitively tell you what to do. So you can still use these postures on a lighter scale rather than just like completely giving up your control and letting AI do everything. So I want to kind of use this analogy. So if you've come to FGA for a while, you might have heard Pastor Chris especially talking about this whole calls to the Bunnings thing that we love to do. And just as for our faith, right, we don't want to be a calls church where you come and you just take in what the pastor tells you on Sunday and then you go back and just live however you want, right? Because it's always just been fed to you. As you go to calls, you just buy something off the shelf and eat it. Whereas we want to be more like Bunnings, where church is alive and active and there's a community and you sharpen each other, iron sharpens iron. And that's the same thing with AI, right? So we can actually extend that analogy here, where with calls AI, you're basically it's telling you what to do, and then with Bunnings AI, you're kind of on the workbench and doing a bit more. So one reason why this matters is that prompting matters, and Uncle Alan mentioned this before as well. So for example, if the user gives a vague prompt like, I'll briefly explain what the prodigal son is about, right? And then ChatGPT just gave like, oh yeah, God forgives and welcomes back. Like, it's very kind of surface level. It's true, but it's very expected kind of response. But with a clearer prompt, you could say, well, explain the prodigal son in the honor-shame culture of first century Judaism, highlighting why the father's running is shocking, and keep it to 100 words, right? So I know that this requires a bit of insight to get into, but you can kind of ask questions to get to this point and then ask a question like this. And here it actually talks about, the son's request of getting the inheritance being a public disgrace, the father running being a shocking loss of elder dignity, the father restoring that honor and reversing the shame, which is countercultural and costly grace. So, and it says that about God, that God moves towards the the disgrace with honor, restoring mercy. So yeah, that was actually quite a lot more insightful and more meaningful when you kind of give it more information and you kind of set the direction and the tone and kind of what you're expecting from it. So this whole Coles versus Bunnings thing, so yeah, Coles AI is like consumer mode. It's like automation, so it flips that posture where you're letting it be in charge and be what tells you what to do. It's like outsourcing your thinking, accepting ready-made answers, and letting AI set the direction and framing. Whereas, and it drifts into like passivity and dependence. Whereas Bunnings mode is like being on the workbench, right? So augmentation, so kind of working alongside with it, or even just telling it what to do actually. So that keeps that Douleuō kind of, or the creator posture, that servant posture, and it treats AI as a tool, not a voice. It uses it to clarify, interrogate, and refine, and it keeps the human as a first voice and the authority, and supports our discernment rather than replacing it. So on the next slide, I've just created like some kind of a little toolkit that you could use to kind of help you shift into that Bunnings posture. For example, for discerning, you can be like, you're interrogating the model, so give me your sources. What do you mean by X when it says something? It feels like, oh, I don't know what that means. Why did you answer this way? So it kind of like makes it surface its biases or clarifies what it's saying, or ask for context before answering, because you can do that to kind of force it to ask you for more information, and then it can give you a kind of a more proper answer that's more discerned. Now the second one is around tools for agency. So you decide, not the AI. So it's like, give me options, I will choose. Or give me the pros and cons, I will decide. I think it needs X, so telling it what it actually needs to kind of address a bit more. Or keep it brief under X words or something like that. So you can kind of keep it kind of limited to a certain kind of format. And the third section is around tools for friction. So that's around slowing down and challenging AI. So assess my thinking critically. And this is one that I use all the time, because I might share something that I'm thinking about, and I'm like, actually show me everything that could be wrong with what I'm thinking. What am I missing is another one. And also, that doesn't feel quite right. What about X? So that kind of forces it to slow down, and also you to slow down instead of accepting its answer just as is. And kind of DIY things that you can do. With Bible and faith, you could maybe, explain a Bible verse in historical context, 120 words, or challenge my interpretation of this passage. What am I missing? Work and study, it'd be like, clean this Excel formula for me and explain each step, or summarize this policy for executives in one paragraph. Creative ideas could be like, suggest 5 simple event ideas for young adults, or like kids, or a birthday party, or for cooking. Keep them low budget and relational. So you can see how I'm including other prompts to kind of force it in a certain direction and not let it set the agenda. Life admin, draft a polite message to reschedule an appointment, keep my tone warm and but concise. So you can kind of tell it to do things like how it should pitch its tone and things like that. Other things like troubleshooting, help me diagnose why this spreadsheet isn't calculating, ask me one question at a time. Or learning, like teach me the basics of Greek verbs, start with the present tense and ask me questions, or any kind of learning thing. So these are all ways that you can start to engage with AI with that Bunnings posture. So right now, a lot of jumping, we'll go into some live AI demonstrations. Yeah.
Alan?
Yep.
While he's claiming that,
Yes.
I had an important thing to say about it.
Sure.
One day someone sent me a prayer that was really long and really grammatically correct,
Yep.
no spelling mistakes.
Yep.
And it's quite different to the prayer that this person used to send before. So I asked him, did you help my friend write this prayer?
Yeah.
Because it felt so artificial, not insincere. And Chat said, well, I'm not the only AI machine. There are others too. And in any case, my conversations with your friend could be confidential. And I'm not willing to share that. So anyway, then it says, are you feel upset because this prayer was written by AI and that it has no grammatical mistakes and it's all no spelling mistakes and so on? Is it too perfect? Ask me that. Why I felt it was insincere. It was trying to learn
Okay, so again,
how to write a good prayer.
all right.
So my danger of that is
So your question
it's so easy to go to AI, write me a prayer for my friend, and like not really engage. like in 2 seconds, you get a prayer and you forward that to your friend.
Sure. Yeah, so obviously, right, we are a relational church in FGA, right? We're a relational church, right? So we're not just trying to fob people off, right? So at the end of the day, let's let all our relationships and our friendships in FGA be genuine, right? So let's not, let's just be genuine, right? Let's be down to earth, and let's not pretend, right? If we don't have time for people, then let's just say, I'm sorry, I'm really busy at the moment. I don't have time to pray for you, right? I'll love to pray for you tomorrow or something like that, right? So just a couple of comments, Auntie, is that, look, we are humans. We anthropomorphize, I can't pronounce the word, but we personalize things, right? Even my wife used to say, she should talk to her car, oh, I love my car, that kind of thing, right? Or when we sell the car, she feels sad, right? So the point being that, things are things, people are people, right? So AI is a thing, right? It may talk like a person because, like I said, it's been trained, right? It's highly trained, right? It knows what you want to hear, right? So if you start treating it like a person, right, you start, asking it, ascribing agency, ascribing emotions, ascribing personality to it, then it will, like I said, it's got a memory. So it will learn that, right? It will incorporate it in its response to you.
The point is, I don't know if I can say amen to a prayer that's generated by AI.
Yeah, right. So,
She was still thinking about it.
yeah. So the point is that,
The AI.
No, she was.
yeah.
Oh, I
No,
know.
it was 2 seconds. It was 2 seconds. Like, I reckon if...
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we'll just move on. So the point that we're trying to say is, we're trying to demonstrate is how can we use AI for Bible study, right? So like for example...
Refuse to answer.
So what's the answer?
Refuse to answer.
Refuse to answer. Oh, wow.
That's
okay.
good, right? But-
All right. So the point is, don't start with your position, right? And then ask AI to prove your position, right? You should, and we can give examples. You always email me or message me later on. You can give more detailed prompts. Like for example, instead of saying once safe is always safe is correct, right? You say what is in terms of salvation, right? What has been the historical church position? What is the orthodox position? So ask it to tell you all the different positions are out there and explain why those positions exist, right? So I had a more controversial example before I edited it, right? Which was like, Catholics are wrong, right? No. You should never ask that kind of question. You should say things like, can you tell me about Catholics, Protestants, Charismatics? Explain what the differences are and how those differences arose, right? Because we are all believers in Christ, right? Everyone has a good reason for their own position, right? So don't just simply dismiss and caricature and strawman your opponent, okay?
I'm just going to show maybe a brief one or two. So
I have to leave for another workshop, so
right.
I will leave you in Lawrence's capable hands. All right? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, so I wanted to show like a brief way to use AI. So one way is like, if you want to learn a skill, for example, I'm learning some languages, French, Chinese, Greek, and stuff like that. So with French, I'm asking it to help me practice French, reply in French with an English translation, correct my sentences, and then in English, reply what it corrected in English, ask simple questions about everyday life, stuff like that. So you can kind of start creating like a prompt, a thing, where it's like, it actually talks in French. Yeah, so it actually speaks in different languages as well, which is pretty cool if you want to learn another language. And then I can kind of give it my response. So this is my response. And I'm setting the boundaries, as you can see. Yeah, I pre-prepared it, but like basically, you can kind of tell me a short question, a short change, what I got wrong. This is what it should be. Thanks for your question. So the question was, what do you like doing? What do you like best about your church community? And I wanted to say, I love having conversations about things happening in our lives. I can talk about how God's changing me, and I can listen to their stories too. And it noticed that I did some grammar mistakes, so it just told me what it was. So that's one cool way of like, you can actually use it to improve the way that you learn and stuff like that. Now, another one that I wanted to show was maybe a short apology message. So if I copy this, sorry, it's a bit hard to do on here. So here I'm telling it to write a short apology message. I spoke too sharply in a ministry meeting and cut my friend off. He felt hurt. Keep it humble and concrete. Focus on what I'm taking responsibility for and the outcome. Avoid over-explaining or self-blame. Give me 3 options and pros and cons. So I can kind of like give some ways of phrasing that to a friend. And you need to tell it what to do, right? So you need to say, I want to take ownership. I want to, I don't want to over-explain or self-blame or whatever. And give the 3 options and pros and cons. So therefore, you can kind of use that to discern what you want to go towards in the end. Sorry?
Can I just comment relating to the question just now about the prayer?
Yeah.
This one you've given it more a better prompt, a more clearer prompt, and
yeah.
you can try to keep it, I guess, more personal, and it doesn't come across as being AI generated. Whereas, yeah, I agree. If you're getting like a message from someone that is quite clearly from ChatGPT, and it's got like words that are supposed to be, personal, that you can tell it's not. It's very insincere. But this one, I think with the prompt, you can use it to help you. But you have to be careful that it doesn't come across as being like insincere and quite clearly generated from AI.
Yeah, thanks. And I think like prayers is one of those like interesting points where like at what point should you write it yourself using AI? I mean, it's a bit of a hard one, I guess. Like use your judgment to decide what to do, I guess. So another one is I wanted to summarize this meeting that I had a few days ago, and it was around like how I can kind of do things at work. So yeah, you can just paste in an image to AI, get it to summarize the meeting and draw out insights. Some details are okay, but be brief to paste into a document. Group doc points would work as well. So I can do that, and it'll kind of read the document, and then it will start thinking, and then once it's done the thinking, it will like give out. Just gotta wait for a bit, I think. Might be an internet thing for me. Yeah, there we go. So it's like, so for context, like I'm at work, I'm kind of doing a bit more than my normal role, so acting in a different role. So I was meaning to kind of understand what the difference is. And yeah, so it kind of drew out all the points that I can do, like more autonomy, more scope, working across levels, respecting curiosity, thriving mindsets, and what I can do in this period, for example. And if I wanted to, I could ask it to, hey, give me a list of action points or to-dos that I can kind of do over this period. And I did that for when I was actually doing it in my own kind of document before, and that really helps me kind of be explicit about what I needed to do next. But it didn't surface that at the start, so I had to tell it what to do. And the last one that I want to show is, because this one. Yeah, so explain the semantic range of the Greek word koinonia, one of the words I really like, in the New Testament, and how it applies to believers. Give me different nuances and explain each in some detail. So if I make a new chat, so it's thinking. I'm using Copilot, but you can use anything. Like I think as long as you prompt it the right way, a lot of AIs will produce like pretty good outputs. So yeah, the Greek word comes from shared relationship with God and Christ. So vertical fellowship with God. Fellowship with the Spirit, shared life with one another, as well as partaking. So koinonia is also the word, not just a fellowship, but also communion as we kind of take of the elements. So we can kind of explain all of that, all of those nuances, based on how you asked it. So you can see I asked it for more detail, and therefore it gave me more detail. But I could ask it for a really high-level summary, and it could just give me a high-level summary. So yeah, how you use AI, how you prompt AI matters. Yes?
Lawrence, somebody wrote this on the screen before. Why would I pay for a subscription rather than have a free ChatGPT?
Well, I don't think you have to, honestly. Like,
What would I get?
you
for
can.
the money?
So some people are power users, so they use it for like, I don't know, creating websites or creating applications or doing like really intense life admin work, like, you know, investing or something like that. Like, these are things where, yeah, if you want to use AI a lot, you might be using it more than the free version allows you to use it at one particular point in time. Then you pay, but you don't have to, right? So like, I think for everyday things, and the way that we're trying to encourage you to use AI, you don't need to, you know, do too much because unless you're a power user. Like, if you want to do it, feel free to, but it's not like a must.
The other question was, with things like music you mentioned before, is that a separate AI, or do you go through the chat?
Yeah, they're different AIs. So that one's like Suno or Moises or whatever, yeah. So yeah, there are different AIs for very different purposes.
Okay.
And hopefully we've answered all the other questions, but if you do have more questions, feel free to like approach me or approach Alan, and we can help you answer those questions. But thank you so much for coming, and yeah, we'll have